The government, of course, announced yesterday a £330 billion rescue plan for businesses struggling, of course, under the strain of coronavirus. The Sun says it's a health check for all Britons. See what they did there. Well, the Mirror, I like this headline. This won't beat Britain. Well, Dr Hilary is with me now to talk about lots of other developments. Yeah, I like that headline, this won't beat us, because it won't.
Absolutely, it won't.
It absolutely won't.
And Dame Vera Lynn contacted us earlier with a positive message saying we've been through the war, we can get through this. And she's right. There is, you know, there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. There's going to be casualties, of course. This is not going to be pleasant at all. But I like to think of VE Day. You remember all those scenes of celebrations and wild parties and the bars are full and the pubs, everyone's behaving badly. That's what it will be like maybe 18 months from now.
We'll be allowed to behave badly.
Visualise that and get through this really difficult patch together, because together we pull together and we will.
Absolutely, I agree. Now, tell us, what's the latest on a vaccine? Because everybody's kind of pinning their hopes on this.
Sure. Now, it's really important to know that scientists around the world are working flat out to try and fight, but it's not easy. First of all, you have to find a vaccine that is effective. We know a lot about this vaccine already. We've got a head start because we've had other coronaviruses before, MERS, SARS. So we've got a head start. Then we need to unpick the molecular structure. We need to find an antidote to that. Then we need to trial this in humans. That's already taking place. Unprecedentedly quickly, I have to say.
It's amazing what can be done when you need to.
Absolutely. And then we need to make sure it's safe.
Right.
And then we need to produce enough for the world.
Of course.
So all that's going to take time. There are stories today that it might be as early as autumn. I think that's a bit optimistic.
OK.
But it's going to be as soon as we possibly can.
Sure.
And that's going to be a major development, and we'll watch this space.
Good. And there are breakthroughs happening all the time, not necessarily a vaccine, but, you know, things that can actually treat people who've already got it.
There's research going on all the time. In Australia, they've looked at the antibody response.
And in Singapore, they're doing amazing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will have, in about a month's time, the government tells us, a serological test, which means you can take blood from someone to see if once they've fully recovered, to see what their immunity is like and how long it lasts. And that's key to knowing how this thing
Science will save us.
As it will.
As science will save us. The NHS, of course, putting non-essential treatments and operations and all of that on hold for 3 months.
Yeah, it's about priority, isn't it?
Yeah, it is about priority. And you know, there was a disturbing news, terribly sad, that someone died at age 45.
Craig Rushton.
Only 45, was
Craig Rushton had motor neurone disease. So this seems like a terribly young age at which to be to succumb to a virus. Motor neurone disease is incredibly cruel. I feel so sorry for his family about his, you know, this is accelerated his loss of life. It's a cruel disease with a limited outlook anyway. That's no consolation.
No, it isn't, because he still had time.
Absolutely. But it's not to say that most 45-year-olds are susceptible. No,
that's very true. And when it was reported, a lot of people didn't mention that. A lot of the media didn't mention that, and I think that was very, very important to do that. Tell the whole story.
It is
Tell the whole
predominantly people with pre-existing conditions and the elderly who are most vulnerable, and they're the ones who need most protection.
Well, interesting you should talk about that, people that are vulnerable, because she is one of the most positive people that I know. Deborah James, of course, living with bowel cancer. She joins us live now. Deborah, of course, as we know, you're living with cancer. You're doing incredibly well. You've got an amazing strength of character, but you really have to be very careful.
Absolutely. So I'm normally a really positive person, as you pointed out, and I'm scared. I think anybody living with a high-risk condition is a little bit scared in terms of how to play it. So I've got my children at home. I'm not entirely locked down, but I've gone out running, get some fresh air, but I'm very much taking uber precautions. I've got a question actually for Dr. Hilary in terms of, I've been given, obviously loads of people contact me and kind of saying, how do we know if we're high risk? Because there's a big sweeping statement that could touch or arguably millions of us. So how do we know? What should we do? What guidelines should we be given?
Deborah, it's a pleasure to speak to you. You know, I'm a great fan. You're such an inspiration to so many, and it's a really good question. So there's a distinction between vulnerable people and high-risk people, OK? So high risk would be anyone who's just, say, had an organ transplant and is on immunosuppressant therapy. They would be high risk. People who are having chemotherapy right now, because that would knock their immunity, that would make them high risk. I don't know how recently you had chemotherapy, but you've been through an awful lot, and you certainly don't want to expose yourself to anything else. So I would say you're being very sensible right now. I think probably just socially distancing and treating yourself as a vulnerable group is absolutely right. So
it being like me being a party girl. That's very hard.
I know it's hard.
What we all want to do is get through this and then have a big party later, don't we? And
You've got to treat yourself like anybody who's usually advised to have the flu vaccine, the seasonal flu vaccine. So people with heart disease, people with kidney disease, people with liver disease, respiratory problems, diabetes, you've got to be careful.
Sure.
You've got to socially distance. You've got to limit the amount of social contact you have, work from home, not take public transport, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and just keep doing what you're doing. I know as well the kids are off, so there's homeschooling going on.
There is. So actually, it takes me back to the fact that, so I used to be a deputy head teacher, so I'm really passionate about education. So I've set up a bit of a homeschool alongside my mum. We're calling it Grid School because obviously it's on the Instagram, and just hopefully it's going to be pulling loads of brilliant things that people are doing. We need a bit of positivity in these times. We're being told, don't do this, don't do that. And ultimately, we're going to have to find a way through. We're going to be at home with our kids. And, the idea of getting them doing worksheet after worksheet is not really going to happen. The best thing we can do is get them reading, having some fun through learning through fun, whatever that looks like. I'm going old school. I'm going to learn to knit. I'm doing tie-dyeing, whatever it looks like, art projects on the go. So come and join us and come and share the great ideas that are already happening out there.
Brilliant.
That is such a good idea. It really is. And you're right. It doesn't have to be like 2 hours of maths and then 2 hours of this and 2 hours of that, because that's not going to work, is it? I mean, realistically, it's not.
No, it's not. And ultimately, loads of people are working from home. They're going to be juggling things. They're not full-time teachers. And I love some of the comments. People are saying, yeah, teachers need to be paid more. Now I've tried it at home. It's hard. And it's hard doing with your own children. It's a totally different ball game. Yesterday, I got to the end of the day and felt absolutely knackered. Eloise had basically said no to me all day, bless her. So we're trying a different strategy today, obviously, but it's just about achievable tasks. And ultimately, if you get to the end of the day, you've had a bit of fun, nobody's cried, everyone's fed, and you're safe. Ultimately, you're safe and mentally happy. I think that's a win as far as I'm concerned.
No, that's very true. I mean, people do have to look after their mental health, and it's so easy. I've had a few bibbles as well. I was talking to Hilary about this. I think, like everybody, you get those moments where you get a little bit anxious and a little bit overwhelmed by it all. I think we're all in the same boat, though, aren't we?
We're all in the same boat and we all have those fears. I had that fear at 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm somebody who lives with cancer. And yes, as Dr. Hilary says, I'm in a good place, but I'm on targeted therapy. So that's one of those other kind of things. I'm still on active treatment and I'm really, really scared. I've still got to go into the hospital to have treatment. Sure. And I know the hospitals are taking extra precautions to protect their patients. But there's some aspects of life that has to go on, and a massive thank you to everybody on the front line, and I know that you guys will be advocating this to keep everyone and the world ticking. We could not be more grateful, and we'll all hold hands together, I think, through this. I think it's the only way, isn't it?
Thank you, Deborah. Great to talk to you. She's absolutely right, isn't she?
Totally. Oh, positive attitude is really important, and she said there we need to give thanks to the frontline staff, not just doctors and nurses who are doing brilliantly and who know they're taking a risk themselves because they haven't got enough equipment, which is a scandal in itself, but also to cleaners in intensive care units. They are working overtime, they're doing a brilliant job, and they don't get the credit they deserve. Paramedics, I spoke to a paramedic yesterday, twice as busy as ever, and they've run out of masks. And again, they're on the front line. They know they're putting themselves at risk. So, you're doing a magnificent job, and I just hope that in the future we do give you the resources that you need, and that we really appreciate the NHS as it should be.
We do. We really do. Hilary, thank you.
Pleasure.
Very much indeed.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hilary Jones. I hope you found that video useful, and if you did, why not think about subscribing and go to any of our playlists that you might find useful.